Welcome to Day by Day True Crime Stories, the podcast where we explore a different crime or justice milestone from this day in history. I'm your host, Kona Gallagher, and today is March 26th. On this day in 2018, the California coast saw one of the most disturbing murder-suicides in recent memory. At first, it seemed like a tragic accident. A family of 8 lost their lives when their SUV drove off a cliff. But as investigators dug deeper, the truth was much darker. Today, we'll be digging into the story of the Hart family, a family whose public image was one of unity, activism, and love, but behind closed doors, the reality was much darker. Let's get started. Jennifer and Sarah Hart seemed like the perfect example of a loving, progressive couple. They were both originally from South Dakota, and they met at college at Northern State University in Aberdeen, where their friendship eventually grew into a romantic relationship. When they graduated, they moved to Alexandria, Minnesota, in search of a place where they could live comfortably as a same-sex couple. Jennifer was the outgoing one. She was charismatic, energetic, and she was the one who took the center stage in social situations. Sarah, on the other hand, was more reserved. She was content to stay in the background and support Jennifer. They both shared a passion for social justice, frequently attending protests and advocating for equality, racial justice, and LGBTQ rights. Their passion extended to their decision to become parents. In 2006, they adopted 3 siblings from Texas: Marcus, who was 8 at the time, Hannah, aged 4, and Abigail, aged 2. 2 years later, they adopted another set of siblings: Devontae, 5, Jeremiah, age 4, and Sierra, 3, also from Texas. All 6 children had experienced trauma in their early years, and the Harts presented themselves as the loving, stable family that would provide them with a better life. The family moved frequently, first from Minnesota to Oregon, and later to Woodland, Washington. But no matter where they went, they maintained a carefully curated public image. Jennifer's social media was filled with pictures of smiling children at festivals, protests, and road trips, always dressed in matching outfits and always projecting an image of love and togetherness. One of the most famous images of the Hart family came in 2014 during a Black Lives Matter protest. A photo of 12-year-old Devontae tearfully hugging a police officer went viral. It became a symbol of hope and unity. But behind that powerful image, there was another reality, one that few people saw and even fewer understood. Despite their seemingly picture-perfect life, there were cracks in the foundation. Friends and neighbors noticed that the Hart children were quiet, anxious, and at times visibly malnourished. Teachers and social workers raised concerns about the children's well-being, and reports of abuse and neglect followed the family from state to state. In 2011, Sarah Hart pleaded guilty to domestic assault after admitting that she had hit one of the children. After that, more reports began to surface. Teachers noted that the children showed signs of hunger, and neighbors recounted disturbing interactions where children begged for food or claimed that they were being punished. Each time concerns were raised, the Harts managed to avoid serious consequences. First, they withdrew their children from school and homeschooled them instead. Then, when scrutiny became too intense, they just moved. Their image as devoted, loving, and, let's be real, white mothers shielded them from deeper investigation. By early 2018, however, the walls were closing in. Their new neighbors in Woodland, Washington had seen the signs and had called Child Protective Services. CPS attempted to intervene, but by the time they arrived at the Hart home for a follow-up visit, On March 23, 2018, the family was gone. Jennifer and Sarah packed up their 6 children and left their home, heading toward California. No one knew what their plan was, but it was clear they were running from something. Surveillance footage later showed Jennifer at a grocery store in Fort Bragg, California on March 25th. She bought about $20 worth of groceries, bananas, snacks, but nothing that suggested that they were planning on being gone for a long period of time. That night, the family's SUV was spotted near a scenic overlook on Highway 1 in Mendocino County. Witnesses reported seeing it there overnight, sitting motionless on a dirt road on the edge of a 100-foot cliff. Then, in the early hours of March 26th, Jennifer Hart, with her wife and children inside the vehicle, accelerated toward the edge without hesitation and without braking. The GMC Yukon plunged off the cliff, smashing onto the rocky coastline below. A German tourist discovered the wreckage later that day, and inside the crushed SUV, authorities found the bodies of Jennifer, Sarah, and 3 of their children, Marcus, Jeremiah, and Abigail. The other 3, Devontae, Hannah, and Sierra, were missing. At first, investigators had to consider the possibility that this was just a horrible, tragic accident. But the evidence quickly told another story. Data from the SUV's black box showed that the vehicle had come to a full stop at the edge of the cliff before accelerating off at full throttle. There were no skid marks or any other signs that Jennifer had tried to brake. Toxicology reports revealed that Jennifer, the driver, had a blood alcohol level of 0.102, which is over the legal limit. Sarah and 2 of the children had high levels of diphenhydramine, the active ingredient in Benadryl, in their systems, enough to indicate that they had likely been sedated before the crash. As the investigation continued, authorities uncovered the full extent of the abuse allegations against the Harts. The reports, the concerns from teachers and neighbors, the previous CPS investigations, it all painted a picture of a home that had been filled with hidden suffering. Over the following weeks, search teams recovered the remains of Hannah and Sierra. Devontae was never found, but he was presumed to have died along with his siblings. How had these 2 women, despite repeated reports of abuse and neglect, been able to maintain custody of 6 vulnerable children? And how had their carefully crafted public image shielded them from deeper scrutiny? These children had needed help, and at every turn, the system failed them. By the time CPS finally took action, it was too late. The deaths of Marcus, Hannah, Devontae, Abigail, Jeremiah, and Sierra Hart were more than just a tragedy. They were preventable. They were the result of a system that didn't act in time and of a public image that masked the pain that these children lived with every day. This case reminds us that appearances can certainly be deceiving and that abuse can hide behind the most carefully curated facades. Thank you for joining me on today's episode of Day by Day True Crime Stories. If this episode resonated with you, please subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. And be sure to join me tomorrow as we explore another significant event in true crime history. Until then, stay safe and remember that behind every headline is a life worth remembering. Day by Day True Crime Stories is a Little Monster production.
Hey, you can do it!